This is Tom Murphy from Pythian Whispers, and you're listening to the Literati Records podcast.
Welcome to episode 59 of the Literati Records podcast. I'm your host, Marcus, and I want to thank you for tuning in, turning on, and supporting independent music. Well, UMS 2013 is now just a fond memory. For those of you who were able to get out for part or all of it, I hope you had as much fun as I did. Some of you may have noticed the effects the weekend has had on my voice for yesterday's show and maybe even lingering a little bit today. Just a little bit froggy sounding, so I apologize for that. Okay, some quick housekeeping and announcements to attend to, and then on to our feature. We're still looking for our monthly cash prize winner for June, Jen B. Shore. If your email begins Jen B. Shore, that's JenBeshore, send us an email from that account to claim your cash prize. So maybe you want to win our cash prize for July. Well, just go to our website at www.literatirecords.com and use the sign-up link on the left side of the page. There are a few contest rules, so be sure to look those over as well. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Twitter, or just drop us a line to literati@literatirecords.com. Well, the housekeeping's complete. Let's meet our featured guest, Tom Murphy from Pythian Whispers. Pythian Whispers is an excellent experimental artist combining electronics, circuit bending technology, soft tech such as apps, and occasional binaural beat patterns to create an alternative audio experience via sound exploration and manipulation. One of my favorite acts at this year's UMS and participants in the upcoming Gold Rush Festival, which you will be hearing more and more about in the coming weeks. So settle in and spend some time with Pythian Whispers. I'm down here at Lost Lake with my guest, Tom Murphy from Pythian Whispers. Great to see you, man. How you been?
Not bad. Yourself?
Pretty good. Give us the names and instrumentation of the members of Pythian Whispers.
Okay, I'll go alphabetical order. David Britton plays a few different synths, analog and digital. He also has built some of his own things called circuit bent instruments. I don't know if they're not instruments. They're just like toys or devices that he altered because he knows electronics. And he knows how to alter them so they can either be used as an instrument or altered in some way so that they make different sounds.
Circuit bending's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. He plays some apps too, not as many. Charles DeGraff occasionally plays bass, but it's not bass in a traditional way. It's more like a treated bass, or he uses it in a way that you're not supposed, quote unquote, supposed to use a bass. He also plays some soft synths and apps, and he has different noise making devices. I don't even know what to call them. Something with a box with a spring on it that has a contact in there in some way that I don't know. But he has a bunch of different ways of making different sounds. Me, I'm almost always play guitar, but sometimes you can't tell it's a guitar because I'm using effects in a way that may almost make it sound like a synthesizer. I've played bass in this band, similar kind of thing, and occasionally synthesizer, but not very often. Depending on the set, sometimes we're pretty free-form with things, and and our sound is built in a way that it can include other elements, and it doesn't really mess it up at all.
Keeps it interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, kind of give us a brief history of how you guys got together and started making music as Pythian Whispers.
Sure. Pythian Whispers started as a solo side project from an old shoegaze post-punk band I had called Tornado Alley, then it was called 900 Ancestors. And that band couldn't play as many shows as I wanted to play and had an opportunity to play, so I just did a side project. It wasn't very good, but it was you have to get started somewhere.
Right.
And it eventually developed into something that I thought was pretty good. And then I was friends with David Britton because he worked at Video One, and that's the only video store I go to. And we always talked about stuff, and he said, we should collaborate sometime. And I played a show that he put together. And then from there, we talked about collaborating, and I went over to hang out with him. I brought some ideas I had for music over because I was so bored with playing guitar the way I was playing it. But I was tired of that, tired of all the effects, so one day I just did what you're not supposed to do with guitar and effects, and put 2 reverse delays and a fuzz pedal, and it made this interesting sound that I hadn't heard anyone else do. And I thought, I'll just do that with David. And then we wrote 2 songs the first night we got together, and then we played them on my birthday 4 days later at an open mic. And that definitely alienated some people, but some other people loved it. And so from there, it became a quote-unquote band. And then we wrote songs every week and performed them almost every week at the open mic. And then we developed a body of work. And then David knew Charles from the video store as well, Charles DeGraff. And, you know, they were all fans of similar kinds of film and music, experimental music, and art films, and not art films, you know, just whatever, and they were good friends. And I met Charles too, and then David shared some of the music we were making with him, and he thought that was really interesting, and he kind of expressed interest in being a part of it, and eventually became more or less a full-time member. And that's pretty much the core band, us three. And I don't know, like pretty early on, we did a lot of recordings. We recorded almost everything we did. We have a bunch of unreleased stuff too. And I think, yeah, in 2012 we put out our first real album called The Dark Edge of Hippie Life. Yeah, I don't know, that was fun to put out, but then we kind of like went on, I don't want to say it a hiatus, we played a lot of shows, but everyone had radically different work schedules.
It's always a challenge.
Yeah, so we did a bunch of improv shows in the last year, I would say.
Well, that kind of brings me around to one of my questions.
Yeah, sure, I'm sorry, I'm all bad.
No, it's perfectly all right. How much of your music is structured, and how much of it is actually, if any, is improv?
Virtually all of it comes from improv. Like improv, someone schooled me on what improv means and what something's. Improv typically is like in the jazz mold, where someone has an ideas for things. Like when Miles Davis was recording Kind of Blue, it was improv, but he had musical ideas going into it that he told the guys, and he said, "This is the core of it. We'll go where we will with it." And then they did it. I'm not comparing us to Miles Davis by any stretch of the imagination, but that's what improv usually means. And there's a little bit of that aspect to what we do, or experimental people.
And that'll make its way out to the stage. And,
yeah, in some ways. Yeah.
So you go pretty much sans set list, and
we have set lists. We have set lists,
okay,
for sure, because we have definite songs.
But somebody will say, "Hey, we're doing this one," and there will be a certain person that starts it, and then everybody kind of
there is that structure to it.
Okay.
We're like, okay, it sounds better when this sound starts first, or if we all start at the same time, or whatever. We do have that level of structure, so it's not like just improv.
But you could record 4 different performances, and you would get 4 different yet similar versions of the same song.
It'd be
probably.
the similar vibe, similar sounds. It wouldn't necessarily be note for note the same. Like, we wouldn't be able to sit down and take here's the note, because some of what we do is a sound, and I don't know how you put a notation for white noise.
Exactly.
Exactly. Stuff like that. But those elements, we do have those there, and a lot of it's very intuitive. Like I'm not obviously not I have classical training as a kid, but I don't use that in what I do now.
Right.
But you listen and you go, well, this is going to sound better this way if it transitions this way. So it's not it's loosely structured, but sometimes it sounds like it is very definitely structured. Depending on some people have seen us a lot and they're like, how do you do that? And it's not conscious. It's more of an intuitive thing.
You just kind of got to turn yourself over to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I heard you guys on, actually it was you. I heard you on Radio 1190 once telling the tale of Pythia and where the inspiration for your band name comes from. Would you mind retelling that for our listeners?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, what it is, the Pythia was the priestess of Apollo. She was the Oracle of Delphi. What she would do is, the theory is that she breathed in these vapors from the earth that caused her to hallucinate, and supposedly she could see the future, or the spirit of Apollo entered her, whatever this means. I don't strictly believe in this stuff, but if people believe in something, sometimes that puts their mind in a different time, a different mind frame, so they are able to open up a part of their mind they don't normally access. And that's the function of mythology and religion, I believe, in a lot of ways. So that was kind of the international religion of the classical world. People would go to visit the Oracle of Delphi and consult her. And I think I mentioned on that show, famously, King Croesus of Lydia. But he was definitely Lydia was I want to say Eastern Turkey, and he was supposedly the richest man in the world at the time. And the question he asked is actually, you can find it online somewhere. It's very involved, but basically it's if I cross the river Halys, what will happen? And Pythia told him, if you cross the river Halys, you will destroy a great empire. And he went to war, and his empire was the one that was destroyed. And Alexander the Great consulted her. He never told anyone what she told him. Socrates famously talked to her, and Socrates was told that he said, who's the wisest man in the world? And the Pythia said, you are the wisest man in the world. And he tried to prove her wrong and wasn't able to do so. But Yeah, I mean, people consulted with the Pythia until the Christian era. No one spoke directly to her. They had other priestesses or priests who talked to her and would convey the question to her, and they would convey the answer back to the person who came to ask her. So there's that dynamic of you don't really know what she said. And now, because it's history, we don't really know what she said. We have no way of knowing if that's even true. The truth is important, but you also have to be willing to live with uncertainty, I think.
And many people have their own version of the truth.
Exactly.
Which is, you know.
And it's not the truth.
Sure.
But
it's the truth as they see it.
Yeah, it's not. The objective truth is elusive. Even science, like, people have a lot of, well, religion, I'm not going to get into that, but science too, where people are like, oh, science is always this and that. It's like, no, science has changed.
Yeah.
It's changed radically in the last 300 years.
Yeah.
Like stuff that they thought was absolutely true, and they proved it with empirical observation, and they found out they were wrong. You know, and that's just the way human knowledge works.
Yep.
And I would posit that not just science, but other realms of human knowledge are that way too. And the Pythia kind of represents a direct link to, like, whatever, the universe, in my mind. But we don't really. The only way to have that is to kind of develop your own and think for yourself. I guess that's kind of like a weird explanation for that.
It works. Okay. It works. It's as true as anything else, right?
Yeah. I mean, not that there's no truth or anything like that, but like, it's like, don't be too comfortable with the idea of what you think is the ultimate truth, and it's okay.
The whole bit about the intercessories kind of makes me wonder how many levels of those there were. Because I think about that game where, like, one person tells somebody and they turn, and then, like, by the time he gets back down to the person asking, have they jacked up the whole thing that the oracle actually said? Yeah,
or even worse in some ways is like, okay, you have a question, you're asking to someone who's breathing in a chemical,
exactly,
and they just come up with whatever comes to their mind. Is like, how seriously are you going to take that?
Yeah,
maybe you can take it seriously, but I don't know.
Interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Well, I know a few bands around town that play a similar style to you guys. How would you rate Denver's kind of ambient drone scene as a whole?
I don't know if it's too much of a scene. There's only a few. Like, what we do is, like, some people call us noise, and I wouldn't call us noise. No. I mean, I have great respect for noise, and I think we are influenced by that. But it's more musical than that. Do
you have a term you prefer?
No, I don't really care. So, like, I don't know, like, I would say, like, ambient or psychedelic, because that's kind of where it's coming from, like, kind of like taking you outside of the regular frame of reference.
Sure.
And that's kind of the goal of the music, I think.
Kind of challenging your own ideas of sound and music.
Yeah, or what it's supposed to be. Yeah. And just, we used to use, we'll get back to it, we used to use binaural beats. But everyone, I think, in that quote-unquote scene is really radically different from each other. And so, like, I think the commonality between all those people is they're trying to tap into emotion and communicate that way instead of communicating necessarily through lyrics. And it doesn't make it any better. It's just a different kind of music. Yeah. So, like, I'm trying to think. There's other people like that too. Like Echo Beds, I consider part of that whole thing, even though they do have words. But those words are almost a sound in and of themselves, and the way they affect you and the viscerality of it. Yeah.
Well, what are some of your favorite places to play live around here? I'm sure there's people that are like, where can I go see this music?
Yeah. I mean, if they want to see that music, I wouldn't recommend too many traditional venues because, a lot of them, they need to make money and stay in business.
Sure.
And I do not blame anyone for that.
Which is why the fact the Walnut Room had, like, a whole...
Yeah.
And they actually have different bands like that quite often, so kudos to them for taking that chance.
And that's a direct function of Randall Frazier being the booking manager. Randall Frazier isn't a great band, kind of similar to my Orbit Service, yeah. Yep. And because of him, those shows do happen there. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't happen there, not as often. And so, like, whether they're well attended or not, he tries to make them happen at least once in a while. So I'd say that's a place you could see stuff like that on a good sound system, because there's not a better sound system. There's some that are as good as that. Like, sometimes the High Dive, you can see that stuff, or Lost Lake, like, here.
Well, there seems to be a number of really active cassette labels directly involved in selling and distributing this style of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you guys done or thought of doing a physical cassette release?
Yeah, we'll probably end up doing that. Like, Wax Trax recently got all of the leftover warehouse stuff from Wax Trax in Illinois, where they got it from Arkansas, where it was sitting in a barn or something for years. So they said, if you just take away anything here. So we got a box of cassettes, and we'll figure out which ones still work, and we'll do our own. But we've talked to, like, Val Franz, who is Between Youth, but they've offered to put something out. And, like, Aaron Miller, who I think his is called Bleak Environment. Yeah, he's offered to put something out, too. And so we'll probably do it at some point. And, like, Planted Tapes, I think, is Crawford Filio's label.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever would, but we would be, of course, be like, yes.
Yeah, he's put out some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. And, like, Matt Sage in Fort Collins has put out some good stuff, too.
If you have any dates coming up you want to plug?
Oh, yeah, actually, we do have a date coming up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I believe we've been asked to play Gold Rush Festival, which is in September, and that's a festival that Crawford Filio has run. He's the guy that has put it together. He's had help in the past, but I think last year and this year he's doing it kind of by himself. But he always picks really good, super underground artists to play the festival, and most of them are experimental. Not most, all of them are experimental bands, and that's something he's very close to. And he's been part of that for years. And his own band is very much a pop band, but an experimental pop band, the Vitamins. And other bands he's been in, but that's his main one now, I think. But yeah, that's a great festival. And if anyone wants to see a good slice of really good experimental music across America, that's the one to go to this year.
And I've actually talked to Crawford about that, and we're going to help sponsor that. So
okay, great.
It is going to be a great festival.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thanks a lot for sitting down with us
and
filling us in on Pythian Whispers. And we look forward to seeing you guys at the Gold Rush Festival.
Yeah, that'd be great.